Welcome to our coverage of the Vuelta a España, 3,800 kilometres. I'm Phil Liggett along with Paul Sherwin, and let's join the action on stage one here. It's a circuit race based on Cordoba in the southwest corner of Spain, 162 kilometres. Paul, the weather is scorching. It's 38 degrees Celsius at the moment.
It is a very hot part of Spain down here, and a lot of riders looking to see what the performance is going to be of the Festina squad. This is their first major rendezvous since they were thrown out of the Tour de France. Alex Zülle, one of those riders who was involved in that doping scandal which really marred the Tour de France this year, and they will be looking to try and clean the slate and prove that they are fairly clean riders.
And just a little more than 90 riders in the main field as we come into the last 3 kilometres before the finish here. And indeed a number of riders have been dropped, including Chris Boardman, so it's a rather disappointing start to the Tour of Spain for the Crédit Agricole rider who crashed out of the Tour de France amongst all of the doping scandals this year. And the riders now heading down to what looks like being a reasonably sized bunch sprint, but they are a long way ahead of quite a big group of riders. As they come up towards the line now, it's going to be a tight fit. Zeeberg gets it. Marcus Zeeberg, the young rider whose brother Beat rides for a different team, has crossed the line first. That's got to go down as the best win of his career. So Marcus Zeeberg gets the first Amarillo jersey of the Tour, finishing ahead of Giuliano Figueras and Laurent Jalabert in third. And stage two, already the longest stage of the Tour, 235 kilometres, taking the riders away now from Cordoba to Cadiz. And not surprisingly, Paul, it's like a desert down this section of Spain at this time of the year. The riders all day were in no hurry at all to race this stage.
Well, it's a difficult part of the country to come and race in, especially at this time of the year, because half of Europe comes down here on holiday. And the early part of the race, the riders really meandered along and enjoyed the hot weather that really does dominate this part of Spain at this time of year. 35 degrees Celsius once again, but coming down towards the finish line, it was the big yellow jerseys of the Once squad on the front. And I feel certain, Phil, that Laurent Jalabert, who said that he wasn't interested in taking the lead so early on, has put a lot of responsibility on his team to keep the whole race together.
Oh, and there's been a crash in the sprint finish. The riders are tumbling down behind here. Jerome Blijlevens has got the victory, but they've left one or two riders scarred in that massive pile-up. As they came into the line, though, Jerome Blijlevens gets the victory ahead of Giovanni Lombardi of the Telecom team. Robbie McEwen of Australia and Rabobank, he gets third, but the yellow jersey staying on the shoulders of Marcus Zeeberg. And the heat's certain to continue on this stage of 193 kilometres from Cadiz on to Estepona. And the riders again staying together in that tight field. Just the sprints for the small time bonuses along the road having their effect. And at the moment, swinging the race in the favour of Laurent Jalabert, who is now breathing down the neck of Marcus Zeeberg overall. But you know, Estepona are quite big players in the sponsorship of the Tour now. That's why the race is going around here. No doubt the reason why we're seeing one of the riders here having a chat with their team car as well.
Well, certainly an important stage for the riders too, because they move away from the Atlantic coast, head around the bottom of Spain via the Rock of Gibraltar, and then head in towards the Mediterranean part of the country. And once again, always near the front of these Spanish races, you can see the yellow and black jerseys of the Once squad, because for them it is so important to perform well here, and they're trying to make sure that they can put Laurent Jalabert in the yellow jersey of this race very early on. And you can see the wins in this part of the race really having an effect and splitting the main bunch.
Well, after being beaten by Marcus Zeeberg first day, Switzerland, and then Jerome Blijlevens from Holland, it looks as though the Spanish are beginning to get a control of this race. The Tour of Spain is infamous for the fact that the Spanish do seem to control the racing. Ask Robert Miller, who nearly won it on one occasion. Here come the team now of the Post Suisse as they try to keep Marcus Zeeberg in that Amarillo jersey. There's been a crash further down the road too. I didn't quite get a long enough glimpse of that rider, but it was a Mappe rider who's gone out the race, Paul.
You know, Phil, I think that was Paolo Lanfranchi who went down there. And what's going on here is because of the temperature, a lot of riders' reflexes are slowing down, but they're still taking the risk to try and stay at the front. And what's happening then is there's a couple of wheels are touching and several riders are falling to the ground.
Well, at least in this long straight, they get a good sight of the finish. And a rider's touched the wheel there. The man on second wheel moved across him, took him out. So there's been another crash as they approach the finish. But the field now heading towards the line. Only two riders on the ground. And it looks as though the man who's going to win the sprint is Jan Kirstiplu of the Estonian champion. Gets the victory ahead of Marcel Wust. But there will be a change overall because of the bonuses along the route. Laurent Jalabert now leads the Tour by 2 seconds from Zeeberg. So not surprisingly, pretty tight at the top after almost 600 kilometres covered. We're now on to stage 4 from Marbella along to Granada. 173 kilometres this one, and we'll stay in the hot weather for sure.
I'm quite certain a lot of these riders are very happy that we're not going up the Sierra Nevada, the big climb just out of the back of Granada here. But in the early part of the stage, in fact, it's Banesto who tried to hot up the racing because John Odriozola tried to go off the front and put a lot of pressure on. Abraham Alano is the leader of that squad, but early on in the race, they've sent him out to try and open up the trails.
Well, Alano would like to feature in this Vuelta a España as the main field coming over. Laurent Jalabert having a good day so far. He's nipped a couple of seconds in time bonuses along the route, so he's building himself a little comfort in that leader's Amarillo jersey.
This part of Spain, as they pick their way through all of the olive trees, Phil, is a very difficult part of Spain to race through, because not only is it dominated by the heat, which is always on this part of the world, but it's also very difficult roads to race on. The road has a very difficult surface to it, and it feels in temperatures like this as if you're sticking to the surface all the time. And in fact, now the Banesto guys have replaced Odriozola at the front with number 25, Jose Vicente Garcia, who's gone off the front as well. So obviously this afternoon, Banesto have a plan and they want to toughen up the race.
Well, they're certainly loosening their legs, that's for sure now. So there's nothing about a promenade on the race today after having had a couple of days of silly crashes. Maybe that's another reason they want to get things on the move and try and loosen up. Just behind him now, the Amarillo jersey of Laurent Jalabert goes over in 3rd place, which is interesting. He's taking a close interest at the front. The Spanish teams, remember, are still looking for their first stage win, and that's a while since they've gone so many days without one.
Certainly is a beautiful part of Spain down here, though, if you ever want to come down and ride your bike in this area, because the roads on the Arrière Pays away from the coastline are devoid of traffic, and you really can have some excellent bike rides. But I don't think Vicente Garcia Acosta is too worried about that at the moment. All he wants to do is try and stay at the head of the race. But you can see the main field really taking these intermediary sprints very seriously indeed. In fact, they're not giving Garcia Acosta much of an advantage.
No, he's been swept up. He's gone back into the pack with a long line of riders, meaning that the pace is on here. Kelme also riding well, and news reaching us too that Guerini, who's 3rd in the Tour of Italy, has abandoned the race today, so I guess he must be sick or something, because he wouldn't have climbed off this early in the Tour. Looking at the face there of Jose Luis Ribera. Remember the rider in the pouring rain that almost stole the stage into Milan on the last day of the Giro d'Italia.
Well, a chance here to see Alex Zülle, the former winner of this event last year. He's sitting at the back there of one of his Festina teammates, but a lot of work done at the front here by Team Telecom, who feel that they've got great chances of stage victories with their man Giovanni Lombardi, who so far, with 10 kilometres to go, is proving to be a very rapid sprinter in this year's event.
Well, this is the sort of day for Lombardi, and that's why they're working very hard for him now. Number 181 is Andreas Kloden, who's a pretty strong German. He's also won a stage of the Tour of Langkawi last year, I think it was, as they now try to set this one up. The Esteponian riders too, those green and white jerseys, would like a stage result because, as I say, this year they're getting some sponsorship into the Tour as well. There's the leader. Had a couple of seconds. He's gained 4 seconds on the road, in fact, in time bonuses, but he still needs a good result at the finish, I think.
Well, 5 kilometres to go, and Jaja looking very comfortable indeed. But it is great to see Lance Armstrong in the field here with the US Postal Squad, because Armstrong really riding for the first time a 3-week tour since he rode the Tour de France back in 1996.
Well, the riders fanning out now for what should be a sprint of all the riders. Jalabert trying to break into the action as well. Always difficult to pick out the yellow jersey in the Vuelta, but there he is, too far back, I think, as the race comes to the line, and it looks as though Marcel Wust is trying, but he's given way to Guidi. Lombardi right there bangs his handlebars. Blyleven's was there. I think Wust only got 4th, but that really was a battle royale of the sprinters, and in fact Guidi, on the day his team leader retires, he gets the Amarillo jersey as well. So that's brought some smiles to the Polti team. Out is Guerini, and into yellow is Fabrizio Guidi. Lombardi 2nd on the stage. So to stage number 6 between Murcia and Alicante, 201 kilometres. The 5th stage won in a sprint by Jerome Blyleven, his 2nd of the Tour. No change at all overall. The yellow jersey still with Guidi. But I think today on this rather sporting course, Paul, we might well see a new leader,
We certainly could do a very tough finish towards the end with the first category climb, the Col de Cati it's called. It's only 4 kilometers long, but it really is positioned perfectly for the finish. But obviously some of the lesser teams in this Tour of Spain trying to get publicity for their sponsors, going out early on. But again, we always see the big yellow squad of Once at the front of affairs.
That was Echeverria there being put back in his place. 10 kilometers to go for the whole field here now. And Guidi trying to keep his Amarillo jersey, got his team nicely in order. Just 7 kilometers from the finish here now as the Polti boys keep the pressure on the front. No sign of Blylavens now, who is the new leader in the points competition.
Well, I tell you, it's going to be very hard for Guidi to keep his yellow jersey this afternoon, because this is a very steep climb indeed. Some of the points of it are 20% as we come up this slope here. You certainly will be seeing some major attacks. So you can see the damage already being done at the back of the main field. And this is Pavel Pandranos of the Seiko team going very easily out of the back.
Which surprises me. He's not a bad rider, even so. But this is a very steep climb here. As we look at the Amarillo jersey of Guidi, he's also in trouble, Paul. He's being tailed off the main field, and this looks like Lance Armstrong going off the front.
Well, this is great to see. Armstrong has looked very good since the first day of the Tour of Spain here, and he's decided to come out and test his legs for the very first time. He, in fact, is coming right up to Jimenez. In fact, Jimenez is going by Armstrong at the moment, so that's a good move by the man who was a former champion of Spain and a very good rider on the Banesto squad indeed. But you can see the yellow jersey of the Tour of Spain this year in serious difficulties further down the slope.
Oh, Fabrizio Guidi here is waving goodbye to that Amarillo jersey. Here is Laurent Brochard, the world champion who has been in disgrace all year with the doping allegations, now back in the Tour. And riders cracking all over the place. This is Casero.
Spanish champion too is having a very hard time getting his rhythm going. He shouldn't be suffering at the back of the race like this. He is a rider who is expected to be one of the stars of Spanish cycling in the future. 4 kilometers to go to the finish, and Jose Maria Jimenez is leaving Lance Armstrong trailing in his wake. But coming up into the front of the race now, again, Laurent Jalabert, always a man to look for the victory on this kind of a finish.
Well, he's had some of his greatest occasions in the Vuelta a España, and he's not going to let it slide away too easy now. He's already had the race lead once in this event, but this hill is an absolute brute here, and Jimenez is creating some damage behind him, and also throwing a spanner in the Banesto works, I would suggest, because Olano is supposed to be the man at the front of the action for that team.
Well, he certainly is. Alex Zuller moving to the front of this very elite group now, being joined by one of his teammates, Felix Garcia Casas, a very good climber, trying to put Alex Zuller in a position to challenge, to keep himself up in the overall standings. This short climb here, Phil, has caused devastation in the main field, and Jimenez comfortably going over the top.
Well, Jimenez then over the top. Now he's starting his descent. I noted that Laurent Jalabert sitting close to the wheel of his former teammate Alex Zuller there. They know each other so well. Kelme rider just going through there was Hernandez. Here comes the field. And Zuller second over, so that's completely shattered now. I'm not too sure where Lance Armstrong has put himself either.
Armstrong was in that group there with Laurent Jalabert. I just caught a glimpse of him going over the top. Only around about 10 riders left in that front group, a very elite group indeed, but I didn't see any sign of Abraham Olano. And a great move with 2 kilometers to go by Jose Maria Jimenez, whose glasses just fell off there as he looked over his shoulder to see where the rest of the pack was. This is Heras Hernandez coming down here, and Armstrong leading the chase ahead of Laurent Jalabert. So Armstrong is definitely back.
Absolutely, he looked good as well. He looked pretty cool there, but this man is leading by the best part of 30 seconds here, so he's going to get the win. And that'll be Banesto's first win in this race since 1990, an 8-year gap. Julian Gorospe was the last Banesto rider to get a victory, and second over the line is Heras. It was 27 seconds, and here comes Lance now, vying for third place. He's going to be challenged by Jalabert. Jalabert coming off his wheel. I don't think Lance can do anything, but a fourth place finish for Lance Armstrong. Jalabert taking the third place on the day, but a new leader now in Jimenez, and that means he becomes the leader of the Tour by 31 seconds. Jalabert is at 36, Olano at 58. And now the riders lining up for stage 7, taking them from Alicante up to Valencia before they cross over to the island of Mallorca. And this shouldn't provide too many problems. It's a flat race of 185 kilometres. And as they come into the last 3 kilometres again, the sprinters set to have their day here, Paul. I don't think anybody can stop that.
I don't think so. 2 kilometres remaining, and certainly the Tour of Spain has designed the early part of their race to smile for the sprinters, and it certainly is a good thing to see organisers doing, because sprinters get less and less chances these days in the big major stage races, but that's certainly not the case at the Tour of Spain.
As they all come down to the line together, there'll be no change overall here, but Lombardi is going to try and finally get across the line first instead of second, and he does it for the Telecom team. Lombardi ahead of Blijlevens. So that was the order over the line. And with no change overall, the riders now crossed over to the island of Mallorca for 2 stages. This is stage number 8, and will take them up to the 1,500 kilometre point. This is not an easy stage, Paul, because this is a mountainous little island.
It certainly is. Many of these riders know the roads again, because one of the early events that they do take part in is the one-day series of races here in the island of Mallorca. There, the final climb of the day out of Sola on the way down to Palma is certainly where the decisions are likely to take place.
So the Banesto boys are doing their job well here, not for Abraham Olano, at least not yet, but for Jimenez, who has the leader's jersey on. By the way, the last yellow jersey wearer from Spain in this tour was Abraham Olano, and now it's over to his teammate Jimenez. Olano winning the yellow jersey in 1995. Little bit of a coincidence.
One of the Spanish riders on the US Postal Service team. This is Juan Llaneras, more renowned as a track rider and a former world champion. A good man to have in the squad. He was brought in by Johnny Welch, but further up the climbs, it's really the Kelme squad who are on their own terrain here, trying to get one of their men off the front, trying to break the stranglehold that the Banesto squad have had on since the very first few lacets of this climb.
Well, that's Jose Luis Ribera, who's gone clear, and he's a good climber. In fact, he had a great tour here, come to think of it, last year. I think on the toughest mountain stage, he won it. And so he's not afraid of the hills. Pascal Hervé, another one of the disgraced Festina riders, now in the Tour and trying to put matters to rights.
These riders trying to race hard and put all the problems from the Tour de France well behind them, but I should think Pascal Hervé has got a few more worries than just getting on with his racing at the moment, as he's managed to get across the gap there to Ribiera. Now there are 2 riders at the head of affairs, and still a lot of pressure on at the front of the main field by the white jerseys of Banesto, and Jimenez is riding like a man possessed, riding like a leader to the squad, and I would think later on there'll be some certain challenges to his own teammate Abraham Olano.
Well, whichever way you look at it, Paul, it is taking the pressure off Olano right now, because all of the riders are looking to the man in the Amarillo jersey. Pascal Hervé has been caught, but we still have that one rider up front. And the Banesto boys also trying to do something here. Armand de las Cuevas, who's a little bit of an enigma in the sport, but riding seemingly well at the moment.
Well, amazing to see De Las Cuevas riding so well here at the Tour of Spain, and I wasn't sure then whether he was going off the front or off the back, because we're looking here at the shape of Marcos Serrano, another revelation in the Tour of Spain last year, and once again the Kelme squad proving that they are a very aggressive team, always out on the attack, always looking for the move to toughen up the race.
Well, they've decided to do that today because they are launching attacks whenever there is a little lull in the pace, and there aren't too many of them today, because the riders themselves are putting up a good race here on the island.
Jalabert going across there in second place, looking all of the time for the small time bonuses along the way, and looking to try and get himself a few points in the King of the Mountains competition. Still, Serrano on the front with an advantage of around about 15 seconds, and now the chasing behind Laurent Jalabert is being done by Jimenez himself.
Well, the Kelme boys always at home when the roads go up, as they continue to launch an attack here. We're still looking at Marcos Serrano into one of the tunnels. The riders don't like racing through the tunnels. There are plenty of them on this island too. A little breakaway group here trying to consolidate in the chase back as well.
Well, amazing as we came up to the top of the climb, it looked as it was very much all together there, but there is a small group starting to get off the front here, and as always Banesto have put a man in there, the Once rider who's managed to get in there as well to keep a member of the team there present to take the pressure off Laurent Jalabert. But this is interesting to note at this stage of the game that in fact a group of 6 riders managed to get clear.
Juan Carlos Vicario is the number 89 we caught a glimpse of there.
Pascal Hervé on the front of the main field. You can see just how tough these roads are around the island of Mallorca. Very difficult indeed, and a lot of work being done at the front by Pascal Hervé. They're obviously trying to set something up for a little later on, for maybe the 1-2 attack by Richard Virenque and obviously Alex Zuller, the defending champion here at the Tour of Spain. But a marvellous backdrop here in the island of Mallorca for a great day of racing.
And they're putting on the style here too, as Pascal Hervé is keeping a lot of the pressure on today. He's a great climber. He won the stage of the Giro and has worn the pink jersey in that event. He turned professional very late on in life. as the tempo continues at a pace here, and Jimenez seems to have the answer to it all. He doesn't look at all stressed as he went through our camera there.
Again, the attack's coming thick and fast. This race keeps splitting up and coming back together again all of the time. A rider there from Cantina Tolo trying to get off the front, but you can see just how difficult on these roads it is to control. The man going away there, in fact, is Martin Havazja, a Slovenian rider who was picked up by Cantina Tolo in the early part of the season. A very strong rider has got across there to the rider from Kelme.
So Havazja and Rubira are the leaders. And Rubira seemingly in his element here now. You can hear the crowd shouting on. The big bunch seems to be steadily getting itself back onto terms here. This again is Rubira. He's determined not to be caught, and you know, if he keeps riding like this, he might well snatch the race lead.
Well, if he can get over the top of Sola, it's a very good descent down to the flatlands on the outskirts of Palma, and then all he has to do then is survive to the finish line. But I think the main field's starting to take a serious interest in the chase behind him, and again, it's the white jerseys of Banesto coming to the front, and riding a very solid role as leader is Jose Maria Jimenez in the yellow jersey.
But although the chasing, in fact, Ribeiro is pulling away at this moment. So he's still strong enough, and he could well be the race leader on the road now, and maybe Jimenez knows that, and he's going to want to get his boys into action. I wonder what Alano thinks about all the energy being expended here on behalf of Jimenez.
Well, that may well be a certain discussion that's going to take place over dinner tonight, but the important thing for a Spanish team is to keep the yellow jersey in the squad, and that's obviously why the riders have formed a good surround in supporting the lead. In fact, it looks as if Ribeira's gone down.
He's gone down, just as the bunch are picking up Bashir there. It looks as though he overshot that bend. He's got up pretty quickly, and he's back into the rhythm. He was pushing it just that little bit too hard, I fear, as the main field now come up to the top of the climb. Jalabert getting more points for the King of the Mountains.
Certainly is, but I think that crash on the descent there, Phil, will take a little bit of wind out of the sails of Rubiera, because that always is a bit of a problem for a rider. When you go down, you don't have the nerves. And again, another rider has gone down there on the descent. Everybody clutching at this race, trying to keep in control. As you can see, everybody taking risks on the descent.
This is turning out to be a shaky old tour here now. Jalabert with those points, by the way, is the new leader in the King of the Mountains. This man, though, is trying to steal the show and get the yellow jersey on his shoulders. There is signs now, though, that they are beginning to eat into his lead. So Ribeiro, that fall, as Paul Sherwin has said, may have taken the wind out of his sails.
10 kilometres left to go, and a lot of work done by the Banesto squad. They should leave it up to the other teams of the sprinters now, really, to try and chase down the leading rider from Kelme. They don't need to do too much work on these flat stages. With 3 kilometres left to go to the finish, I think it's all over for Rubiera.
He sat up, he sensed them coming, and they're going to wipe him out here now. He looks over the shoulder. That's really sad, in fact. He was at one stage the new leader on the road. He's now been picked up. He'll have to race another day when this race continues into the mountains back on the mainland. But as they come up towards the line now, Guidi's going to get his second stage win. He's challenged there. I think it was Van Petegem on his side, but Guidi gets it. Van Petegem second, and Andre Schmil popped up there with third place. Overall, though, there is still no change at all. As good stage as it was for Guidi to win, it hasn't altered the overall classification. And now the riders staying on the island here for the Alcudia time trial. 40 kilometres this, Paul. Basically it's a flat course, and already after just a few days of racing, the riders have done 1,500 kilometres.
A very tough recipe for the riders. That's a lot of racing to do, especially in these very hot and humid conditions. Out on the course, though, the man who leads the Kelme squad, Fernando Escartin. What a consistent performer. He too now is trying to ride himself into the top 10 of this race.
Well, he wants a good performance here because he was pulled out of the Tour de France in protest over all that business of doping when he was lying fourth overall. He said he wasn't worried, but surely you must be when you're left out of a tour in such a high position. Here's Alex Zula trying to race himself back into the scene. This is where he made his mark early on in the Giro d'Italia this year. It became quite a tussle in the end, which he lost, but in the time trial, the first time trial, he was good, and he's looking good right now too. But in fact, his times on the splits are not looking good because he's losing time to all of the stars, big time indeed. So perhaps his form has left him after the Tour de France debacle. And now this is Lance Armstrong. He is looking good.
He certainly is. His times at the moment of the splits are putting him well inside the top 10. And for a man who in 1996 was diagnosed with testicular cancer, this is an incredible comeback. I think one of the greatest comebacks in the sport. 3 Ks to the finish for Armstrong.
So Lance Armstrong fighting his way back into the big scene here, winner of the Tour of Luxembourg and the Rhineland-Pfalz this year. As we now look here at Sergei Gonchar, he is the man they should all fear in the time trial because he rides so well in them. All of his victories coming in time trials of note, and he's the champion of the Ukraine as well.
It's an amazing guy to watch in a time trial. He doesn't look like a time trialist at all. He's not smooth, but he certainly is very strong. Now we're looking at another good time trialist. Uwe Peschel was third in the first ever World Time Trial Championships, and he's riding for the team sponsored by Estepona.
And so Peschel in the shot here, former East German rider and one of their best as well, now a full professional of course, and occasionally comes up with the rides but not all that often as a pro. Abraham Olano looking very, very smart indeed, and the splits are saying he's setting the best time too right now. So Olano is fighting himself back onto the scene here, not the last to start of course because that's down to the yellow jersey on his team, Jimenez, but Olano might be taking it.
He may well be. In fact, he's already caught Daniel Clavero and left him a long way behind. And the power and speed of Abraham Olano is unbelievable. It makes you think you're watching, once again, Miguel Indurain out on the roads of Spain.
Well, Olano is in, and it's going on the board as the best time for the 39.5 kilometres, 47 minutes and 7 seconds for Abraham Olano. Best time. Well, we're looking now at Laurent Jalabert, Paul, probably one of only two riders who might disturb the rhythm of Abraham Olano, of course the former world champion here in Jalabert, well the current world champion actually, and riding very well.
Certainly has improved his time trialling ability, and what he's trying to do here is make sure that he can match the performance of Abraham Olano, who started a little further up the road than he did, because if Laurent Jalabert today can equal the kind of ride that Abraham Olano is trying to do, then he may well be the man who's going to put on the Mayo Amarillo later on this afternoon.
But even so, the time checks are putting him over a minute outside of the time of Olano, and it looks as though he really isn't quite firing as he has done in the past in the Vuelta. Maybe the happenings of this summer have really disturbed his rhythm. Unlikely to ride the World Championship as well because he's actually insulted some of the officials of the UCI.
It's also very difficult for Jalabert as well, because Jalabert is one of the few riders these days who actually races for the full season, starting right in competition early on. And look at that time, Phil. It's well off the leaderboard, outside that of Abraham Olano.
So a good minute plus as we watch here now the running of the yellow jersey. Jimenez last to start, and knowing that his teammate Olano more than likely will ride a time trial better than he, there seems to be no animosity in the team. In fact, to the contrary, these two Benesto riders have been enjoying throwing around the yellow jersey. But I wonder now if it will find the shoulders of Abraham Olano, because Jimenez is a mountain climber, and this his least particular form of cycle racing, I suspect.
Well, out on the course, he's lost an awful lot of time, Phil. In fact, he's lost minutes to his own teammate, Abraham Olano, who's going to run out the winner of this time trial.
So Olano is back on top, and that is something of a surprise, but he always uses the time trial. He's used it to very good advantage. He's got the jersey off his teammate Jimenez, and now let's have a look at the result. So Olano wins by 41 seconds from Melchior Maurer, the Once rider. Uwe Peschel getting third place there on the day, and fourth place Laurent Jalabert. This is the situation in the King of the Mountains, although there wasn't any today, but nevertheless Jalabert leads by 4 points from Francisco Cerezo, who was the leader in the King of the Mountains till Jalabert took over from him. And then in the sprints along the route, Giancarlo Raimondi is the leader here. Jalabert in the frame there second. Guidi, not surprisingly, up to third with 17 points in that. He's had 2 stage wins. And the overall, no, it's not. This is the points competition. Jerome Blyleven's leading by 4 points from double stage winner Fabrizio Guidi. They've both picked up 2 stages so far. Abraham Olano is the yellow jersey, 41 seconds ahead of Jalabert. Mauri is third. Well, let's hope Jimenez has recovered on the rest day, which was yesterday. The rider's now going to the northeast corner of Spain, to Vic, for the big mountain stage of just on 200 kilometres, taking them now to the little principality of Andorra, right in the heart of the Pyrenees, which has seen so many great showdowns in world cycling with the Tour de France and, of course, the Tour of Spain. And we'll cut a course through the mountains and finish where the Tour de France has finished at Arcalís. And it's a tough climb, as we all know, Paul. And Jimenez, well, who's he going to fight? His own teammate, Olano?
It's going to be very difficult. 52 kilometres still to go to the finish line, and all of the riders worried about this stage, which the Spanish really like to call the Etapa Reina, the queen of stages, because it is so tough indeed. And already out on the course, a lot of these riders feel that they can put the new yellow jersey into difficulty, Abraham Olano, because Olano really doesn't climb as well as his former teammate Miguel Indurain.
Well, Francisco Cabello of the former stager in the Tour de France and of the Kelme team has been very active today. Now we're looking at Casino's Frederic Bessy here. And Casino, remember, on a high this year. They've had tremendous results, moved right up the top of the team classification in the world rankings, but he looks to be in a bit of bother here.
He certainly is. This is a very difficult course, and this is a part of the course that's used earlier in the season in the Tour of Catalonia, so a lot of these riders know this. And in fact, this is where a couple of years ago Chris Boardman, the British rider who was leading the Catalonia from the very first day, lost out here on the penultimate stage of that stage race. You can see here now that the Kelmes have obviously come up with a plan, Phil, because they've put as many riders as possible into this leading group.
Well, Cabello has been so active today. Munoz dropping away from the race as these two are trying to move on. Francisco Cerezo, Santiago Blanco. And there is the new Amarillo jersey of the Vuelta after that time trial, which was 2 days ago now. The riders were coming off the island of Mallorca back here onto the mainland in lovely sunshine in Andorra. And Abraham Olano, I don't know whether he's concerned about the whereabouts of Jimenez or not, but Jimenez is the man to watch out for here in the Pyrenees.
Well, interesting to note, another attack there coming from the Kelme rider. Right on his wheel as he came out of that group there was his own teammate, Fernando Escartin, who today is looking very good indeed and riding very close to Abraham Olano. And this obviously is their plan, to launch as many guys on the attack as possible. And I feel certain that once we get to the latter climbs, you'll see Escartin as well trying to leapfrog up to these guys and put the new Amarillo jersey into difficulty.
Well, news reaching us too that Festina have been weakened now by the abandon of Blanc Dufaux, second in this race and third in the last 2 years. And he's gone, I think, suffering low morale, as most of the Festina team are, after their eviction from the Tour de France with the Festina doping scandal that blew up. And this is Pascal Hervé, who was the leader in the King of the Mountains when the team was evicted. And funnily enough, the other King of the Mountains leader in the Tour, Rodolfo Massi, he's retired today, and he was the King of the Mountains in the Tour de France when he was evicted and sent down to jail.
It's been a very difficult day for a lot of riders. It always seems that riders have a hard time digesting a rest day, which is what happened yesterday. And one man who's had a hard time early on in this stage, in fact, is Maurizio Fondrias, who's pulled out of the event as well. But it's good to see that the new Vitaligo Seguros team is putting some of their big boys up at the front, because Angel Luis Casero, who's the Spanish champion, is looking to try and do something, and they've got their top man Santiago Blanco on the attack right now.
And he really is the top man too. A big tussle for the right for him to ride for the team throughout the winter that went to court, but he's won the right and he looks to be a star of the future. At least the team thinks he will be. Venesto boys under pressure, yes, but they've got the firepower in these mountains to maybe put the situation to rights. There's still a fair way to ride, and there's lots of climbing, and as you can see, the weather absolutely idyllic here in September for the Vuelta, which has profited from the move from a traditional date in the early year, and I think a lot better for it now. It's become a race in its own right.
Well, Casero going over the top there in second place, but still, Phil, despite the fact that I feel the Tour of Spain is a very well-placed race now at the end of the year in September, a lot of the riders still complaining about the fact that it is too late in the season, because a lot of riders are now just coming to the Tour of Spain as preparation for the World Championships. But it really does put a real good sting in the tail of a very long season.
Oh, it looks as though Hervé's got a sting in his tail right now, because he's coming slowly back into the field. He's been away, and this is a very select little group that's now forcing themselves into the action here. Looking out for, of course, Jimenez and the yellow jersey of Olano. Olano is in this group, and it's quite a hefty little group of good climbers coming up as well.
It certainly is. Richard Virenque is riding very much to the front of that group, but I do have to think that the Banesto team has changed an awful lot since the retirement of Miguel Indurain. It seems as if a lot of the younger riders have been liberated, because they are such a strong team now. It was always said that the Banesto team wasn't strong enough to support Miguel Indurain, but here they're always to the front in force and all riding very well to defend the leader, whether it be Jimenez or whether it be Abraham Olano.
As they continue on the climb of La Camela, here are the men setting the pace, and they look as though they've got themselves a good little tandem going here, nicely relaxed as they race towards the final climb.
Oh, coming through to the front there. We've got Javier, who's helping out Casero Blanco exceptionally well here, but there's another Casino boy going right off the front there. He's decided now's a chance for him to try and get up there, because Casino certainly want to try and put some of their riders in. They've not had a great deal of success so far in the Tour of Spain, and for a team which is regarded as the #1 team in the world at the moment, they're launching Fabrice Gougeot off the front to get across to the leaders. 1 minute 17 back to the main field, and this is the descent that was used a little earlier in the year in the Tour de France when it came up here, well, last year I should say, and the descent was used in the Tour of Catalonia, so these riders know it very well. It's very tricky, and once they get down to the bottom of here, they'll go through Andorra la Vella, and then they'll be heading up towards the finish line in Arcalís.
And that climb starts, and it just keeps on going up and up. It's a great area to go cycling when you're not under pressure to win a big time stage race, that's for sure. There's the man who's just crossed the gap and strengthened the lead at the front, not noted at all, the young professional, as a great climber. And I think these boys here are doing just enough to keep in touch with the leaders, and they're waiting for the final run at the Arcalís.
Well, there's Jimenez on the left-hand side there. In fact, over the rest day, there's a few rumblings of a certain disagreement between Jimenez and Olano starting to come in, because for the moment, Olano has not re-signed his contract with Benesto, and in fact, his wife has started the negotiations with the team management, and she's trying to put a certain few clauses into that contract to make Olano the sole leader of the team. So there's a bit of friction coming there. It'll be interesting to see just how those two guys handle it today.
Well, there's #1, the winner last year, so emphatically so as well. And he looked to be on course to win the Giro d'Italia this year. Then it all went wrong for him. The Tour de France, of course, completely went wrong. And so a chance for Zola maybe to do something here. But he's on the wheel of his ex-teammate now, Laurent Jalabert. Always looks cool, Laurent, even when he is suffering. But I don't think he's having a good tour. Not like the winner he has been of this race in the past.
Well, certainly it is a very long season for him. He had the white jersey on there as leader of the King of the Mountains competition, and he is at the moment still in second place in the overall standing. So he will certainly be keeping a very close eye on Abraham Olano. But there looks like one of the Kelme guys put it into reverse gear there, because he was out in the front, obviously waiting for Escartin to launch an attack, but the Benesto guys here doing an excellent job on the front.
Well, the Serrano dropping back, an early attacker on the climb, but he's now looks as though he's hit the wall a little bit there, and he's still got the big one still to come as these three continue to head out now towards the final climb of the day. And it's a toughie. If you may remember, it was the springboard for Jan Ullrich when he passed Cedric Vasseur, who was the maillot jaune of the Tour de France 2 years ago, or 1 year ago, 2 races ago, and he went on to take the lead and win the Tour de France.
Now just cruising through the outside of Andorra la Vella. And these roads, although they're on the profile very flat, they're all slightly uphill until they get to the bottom of that road, which will take them out of the valley, then up towards the ski station at the top of Arcalís. And that is going to be where all of the big guns start to fire then, because now is when they really must ride for themselves. And it's going to be interesting to see after the rest day how Abraham Olano is going to handle this climb, because I have to say, as I've said several times during this Tour of Spain, he's not one of the greatest climbers, and he doesn't seem to be able to respond to the attacks and incessant accelerations of guys like this who are shooting off the front at the moment.
Luis Ricardo Mesa trying to get away now. They just love their mountains, these riders from Colombia and from Spain. And you see, the gap is nothing, Paul. There's the chase group just behind now, and Mesa trying to get across and reach them first.
Well, he certainly has opened up a gap to get across there, and the main field with all of the Benesto team on the front putting the pressure on have nailed down this group very quickly indeed. At 1 moment ago it was 1 minute 17, and I would say it's well under 30 seconds at the moment, but still everybody trying to get an advantage of 10 or 20 seconds before they turn off onto the very steep slopes of the early part of this climb, because it is such chaos in the main field when you get to this climb, because it is very narrow indeed, and if you can get there in the first 10 places, then it's a lot easier than fighting in the last 20.
And Cerezo was the rider passing through our camera lens there. They're all getting up there now, one by one. Mesa also trying to get up there. He's got a teammate up here as well, Fernandez, Federico Fernandez. So there's going to be 2 of the riders from the Avianca team, and none of the big stars yet. They're all allowing the, should we call them, the little fish to run, and before they make their move, because they know the finish is so tough. And it's a fair length at 200 kilometers. Here's the situation. There's the leaders on the left of the picture, the chasers on the right, and down below is the climb they're actually on. The clever technology we have these days.
Well, the three guys in the middle, they're trying to get across, are part of that very small Colombian team which has come across to take part in the Tour of Spain, the Avianca Telcom team. A team, in fact, that Alvaro Mejia, who finished 4th in the Tour de France a few years ago, has now actually signed up to race for again. So they feel today is certainly a day that will suit the Colombians, because they are still regarded as some of the best climbers in the world, but a big power on at the front here. In fact, and Jimenez has got across to mark an attack that's going clear again by one of the Kelme riders.
Well, the three leaders are Serrano, Blanco and Goujo, and it wasn't Serrano that we saw get caught early. It was, in fact, Francisco Cabello who hit the wall and dropped out of it. He was the man who started all of the action today. Clearly, the man they decided for Kelme was to go out and loosen everybody up. He's lasted as long as he could, and he's paved the way for Serrano to get into this lead group. Their big man, of course, Escartine, we haven't seen him yet, but he is in that chase group. And there's another man trying to get across here right now, so the Kelme boys are now beginning to fire.
Now this is going to be interesting to see what the reaction will be of Abraham Alana, because Jimenez himself has come across here to match this chasing group, and he's got right across to the front group of 3 riders, making 5 men at the head of affairs. And you can see, in fact, 3 Banestos on front of the main field, just keeping Abraham Alana in 4th place there. So the pressure now is on the Banesto boys to try and keep the yellow jersey.
Well, this is a serious move, and the reason Jimenez has responded is because that's Roberto Heras from Kelme, who's right up in the overall rankings and clearly enjoying his tour here. He's not a big name in cycling, but he always rides well in the Vuelta.
He certainly does. A big revelation last year when he won one of the stages on the Vuelta España, and I think a lot of panic now starting to come into the Banesto boys. It's the first time that they've really been put under pressure in the Tour of Spain so far, and obviously on one of the toughest stages. There's the composition of that group: Jimenez, Heras, Blanco, Goujo and Serrano. But the most important thing for Abraham Alana is probably the presence of his own teammates in that group.
That's incredible. 5th overall last year, Heras, by the way, and now that's why Jimenez has come. And interesting, but Alano hasn't made any resistance here. He's just riding along behind his team. And also here is Laurent Jalabert. There's the first time gap between what is now a very serious breakaway. It's only 21 seconds, but the roads now are going to be just grind, grind and grind.
Well, Alana riding sensibly. He hasn't got to the steepest narrow part of this climb yet, so he's holding back and letting his teammates do all the pacemaking at the front. Laurent Jalabert in the white jersey, very comfortable on his shoulder, and he will wait until he gets to the bottom of the climb. Then he'll have to take over the pacemaking himself, because certainly his teammates will disappear. But this is a great tactical move, Phil, by the Kelme squad, and I think they're one of the best squads in the sport when it comes to mountain climbing, and tactically they've put a man up there now to put the yellow jersey into difficulty. But look at the ease of Jose Maria Jimenez. He's just sitting there letting everybody else set the pace, and he himself is taking advantage of this move.
He looks really good today, and he's nicely thinned down here. Just sitting on the back here is Casablanco, Colombian rider.
Another Colombian rider from that Avianca. Yeah, he wasn't there before. No. He's obviously leapt across it. Now this is important, because in fact Escartine is going. Everybody is throwing it down at Abraham Alana, and he hasn't responded to that attack either. This man is incredible. He looks like a crab on a bike. He gets right down there, gets his elbows out, but once the road goes uphill, he certainly can move.
But the thing is, these guys are all sprinting off this lead group. They're all anxious to join that breakaway, which is dangling right in front of them like a huge attraction to a donkey, and yet Alano is watching and doing absolutely nothing. And I'm wondering if he's having something of a bad day, because I would have thought by now he might have tried to go with Escartine, and you know, he doesn't actually ride that well in the Pyrenees.
He certainly doesn't. He hasn't got the acceleration to get across these gaps like the pure climbers have. He has to ride with a big gear. He has to get into his own rhythm, and he's using his teammates at the moment. Another man trying to launch the attack on Abraham Alana here is Alex Zuller, who's been joined immediately by Laurent Jalabert. So they've obviously kept an eye on how Abraham Alana is looking, and looking at that film, he's not going too well.
He's suffering, and I think also Jalabert isn't looking so good. He's another man who doesn't like the Pyrenees, Laurent Jalabert. He's a middle-of-the-road climber. But as he's shown in the past, he does love the Tour of Spain, and he's got to the front now. He's realised that he's got to do something. The onset of nobody up there, at least of all Jalabert, so it's down to the team leader to see what he can do, because the Spanish and Colombian climbers have decided today is their big day. They're all saying this is the toughest stage of the Vuelta this year, and they're going to make something of it.
Well, this is Odriozola on the front there, trying to help out Abraham Alana. Beltran was in second position there, and this race is all in a handkerchief at the moment. You can can see the group here with Escartine coming in, and again, Escartine has got a Kelme teammate with him. So we're going to have 3 Kelme riders at the front of this race very shortly, and that will give them a very serious attempt at taking over the lead in the team classification. But Jimenez controlling everybody on the front here, Phil. This is the steepest part of the climb here, not far away from where, in fact, a couple of years ago we saw Jan Ullrich blow everybody off his wheel. Jimenez is just sitting there in the group and letting everybody else do the pacemaking.
Well, after the time trial, the Once boys grabbed the team lead away from Benesto. It was held for a day before that by Lotto. But looking around the group here, Benesto are about to get it back, or Kelme, because they're both well up with men. Once look a bit thin on the ground.
They certainly do. Laurent Jalabert, I think, very happy just to be in that group with Abraham Olano, and I reckon he's going to mark Olano later on this climb and use the big Spaniard, who climbs very steadily indeed on these climbs here. But the serious move now certainly coming from Kelme. A shout there coming from Escartine to his teammate. Come up, let's keep the pressure on. We've got the Benesto boys just exactly where we want them, and look at that.
Oh,
he's blown his own teammates away.
It's a beautiful day for a bike race, and the Kelme boys are saying it's a beautiful day for a big attack here. There's Escartine in 4th in the Tour de France till he was forced to go home after all the problems surrounding the Tour, and now obviously going to make amends in the Tour of Spain.
I do feel sorry for Escartine, because he was actually drawn into the abandonment of all the Spanish teams by a kind of pressure from the general public in Spain. It was an overnight telephone call-in that the Spanish teams organised with the local Spanish people there, and they recommended that all of the Spanish teams should pull out en bloc. And I reckon that Escartine is going to regret that decision for a couple of years to come.
Although he says he doesn't, he must, because you can't ride so well in the best bike race in the world and not come good. This looks like it's Nicky Ebersold from the Swiss team trying to make a bit of progress.
Abraham Olano now still using his teammates very sensibly indeed. On the front there, Odriozola, followed by Beltran. Beltran, a very good climber indeed, and one of the French riders, that was Bessie, who's going to go shooting out of the back there.
It's Gougeot, in fact, Paul. He's cracked. He was in the front group, but he's gone. He went across there well enough at the bottom, but the climb has gone on a little bit too much for him, and the Spanish and Colombian climbers have hurt him too much and pushed him out of it. But this the race here now is just one big survival, and anybody that wants to could get across that gap, but only if they've got the legs. And it looks to me as though Olano might be on the back burner here.
I think he is on the back burner. He's leaving his teammates to do the work. One of the Colombian riders from Avianca Telcom coming back from that leading group. Sensibly, though, you can see that Olano is not panicking at all. He's letting his teammates do the work as much as he can. The idea of being a good leader of a race like this is to make sure you use your teammates till the last possible moment. But that gap to the leaders is actually starting to increase quite a bit.
Yeah, but the big thing about top bike riders, they know their ability and the limits of their ability, and somebody like Olano is going to allow these riders to have their moment and will not overtax himself, because if you hit the wall by overshooting your mark, then you're going to lose big time. At the moment, he might only lose a minute or so because he's riding very, very sensibly here.
Jose Maria Jimenez there, just sitting at the back, riding an excellent race here. He's a guy who I thought would have done better in the Tour de France this year, but obviously didn't do quite so well. Virenque now deciding that everybody is leaving Olano behind, and he's going to have a go at trying to put... In fact, it's not, it's Hervé once again. Well, that's a big surprise. These guys, they all had their hair dyed just before the Tour de France, and they all look the same now.
I think Virenque's has grown out. It's back to black again. But anyway, Hervé's kept his. We're on the Montauk now. First category stepping stone to the final climb. And again, the decisions are being made. This is another beautiful climb here.
It certainly is. It's okay to watch, but I tell you one thing, I wouldn't like to be out there riding today because the pressure is certainly on. Hervé is digging in again, trying to put Abraham Olano into pressure. There's Virenque in third position there, slipping back down the line, and now the attacks are coming from the big guys from the Mapei squad, because they certainly are looking for something out of this tour. This is Oscar Kamenzin, no longer in his Swiss national champion's jersey, but he too is looking for a good performance.
Yeah, that national champion now is Ebersol. We caught a glimpse of. He's disappeared. I think he's back in this group somewhere. But Kamenzin now pushing on. They're nipping across as best they can. And the Cofidis boys on the defensive here as well, without Bobby Julich, of course, after his marvellous Tour de France. But Bobby in the past, I think, in fact, really, he first came to our notice in a Tour of Spain when he was so good.
It certainly was. In fact, he took the King of the Mountains competition early on in the Tour of Spain a couple of years ago and held on to it for 10 days, and everybody said, this guy is pretty good, and he was signed up and transferred across to the Cofidis team, where really this year's Tour de France proved that he is a magnificent rider, and an American rider we'll see an awful lot more of in the future.
Kamazin been picked up by Zuller. Zuller's had to make some sort of decision here and see what he can do. He doesn't look great, but he's going to give it a go, as all great riders do. And joining there, Clavero of Spain. Wow, now all of a sudden this group is getting a little bit thin and short of teammates for Olano. He's only got one left.
He's only got one left, and he'll use him for as long as possible. And once he fades away from the front of that group, then what's going to happen is Abraham Olano will have to take up the pacemaking himself. Alex Zuller now seems to be getting across the gap. He's riding well, but it's very difficult. You can see the pain on his face, and this is certainly a very difficult stage, especially with the heat over this part of Spain at the moment. It's very hot indeed in September, 32 degrees Celsius on the thermometer this afternoon, and Zuller is digging deep trying to get across the gap, and he knows Abraham Olano further down the road is in serious difficulty.
There's a lot of individuals living in their own private world of pain here at the moment. Zuller has made an effort, but I think he's not going to get on, and there's the answer to that. He almost made it, and the legs have gone. Escartine will be very pleased to know he's cracked Alex Zuller here, because he is keeping the pressure on. And these sort of climbs, which don't look steep, but they just hurt the legs all the way. You can see a long way ahead, and it is a very difficult mountain to climb.
Cameron's in there on the front setting the pace, and the guy right behind him is Daniel Clavero, who's pulled his jersey up just to try and keep a little bit of cool air coming through there. But Alex Zuller didn't go anywhere at all. He got 100 or 200 meters in front of this group, and he just reached his maximum speed, and they've pulled him back into the fold.
Well, the old form just not there for Alex Zuller, and Olano will be pleased to see him come back. He'll know now he's not going as well as he usually goes. Last year's winner back in the pack. Olano continuing to limit his losses here and looks okay. There's the differences now. 36 seconds, the leaders back to the chase group. 13 seconds, the chasers are just ahead of Zuller and Olano. These are the leaders now, and Jimenez and Escartine, two brilliant pure climbers, now free as birds at the front of the race, and they might make ground here.
Well, Escartine's not going to get any help at all from Jimenez, who's sitting in second position there, riding sensibly. You see, just getting into his back pocket there, throwing the food away there, making sure that he's as light as possible for the last part of this climb. And Jimenez has got to ride all on the back wheel of the man in front, because he, for the moment, is riding the role of a domestique.
A main chase group here with Roberto Heras, also going to accelerate up the overall classification again, as he makes a little pace at the back, but he probably won't chase too hard now, because Escartine, the team captain, is up front. And let's see, no, you see, he won't help anybody. He's just riding third wheel, keeping an eye on the world. It's a lovely position to be in. You can follow wheels and nobody can complain.
25 kilometers to go, and still everybody within 1 minute of each other. You can see the leading group of two riders still 35 seconds ahead of the chasers, and still only around about a quarter of a minute separating them from the main group here, with Abraham Olano, Virenque, and obviously Alex Zuller.
Well, a little bit of false flat for the chase group in the bottom picture, but as you can see, they'll be on the climb again very shortly. And well, Olano just allowing it all to happen around him at the moment. Now, these are the kilometers per hour of each moto. Moto 1 follows the leaders, Moto 2 the chasers, and Moto 3 is with the Olano group.
Coming over the top of the climb there, Jimenez just pops by Escartine to take maximum points in the King of the Mountains. Thank you very much, I'll have that one. And he'll resume his place up in second behind the attack that's coming from Fernando Escartine. The group behind, though, is now looking very serious indeed, with a lot of work being done at the front by Clavero. Oscar Kamenzin very happy now to sit in second position, and obviously the Kelme rider there in third won't do anything at all to help, because his man, the number one man on their squad, is out on the attack trying to get himself a victory in the Tour of Spain. He's always been very consistent when it comes to these big 3-week stage races, but he's never managed to pull off the big win.
Well, Laurent Jalabert, by the way, is the current leader this morning in the King of the Mountains, but the way it's going right now, Jimenez at least could be pulling on that white jersey tonight.
Well, there's Lance Armstrong as well. He's very much to the front in this group, having a fantastic Tour of Spain there. He's up and around 6th position, so obviously riding very comfortably. And this guy, I think, is surprising everybody in the Tour of Spain. Okay, he rode well on the flat stages. He won the Tour of Luxembourg this year, but to be riding at the front on a tough mountain stage like this is remarkable.
It means he knows how he's feeling, and he must be feeling good, because this is a tough stage today. The weather conditions in everybody's favour, I think. But even so, Alano here, not making any effort to slip away. He knows his limitations. He's just freewheeling at the front of the group. And he's a pretty good descender anyway, but at least this way he sees where he's going, and these roads are made for fast descents.
Certainly are. He's right down there in the tuck position. This rather a difficult and dangerous position to adopt, because you lose a certain amount of agility on the machine, but it does get you down as low as possible. And in fact, that little descent there has brought him up to the group that was right in the middle. He's closed 13 seconds in no time at all. But you could be pretty certain that Lance Armstrong won't be too far behind, because he too is an excellent descender.
Well, there's Jimenez getting the 16 points in the King of the Mountains. No score at all for Laurent Jalabert, so we have a new leader for sure now. The Benesto boy riding well, and the way they're riding, they could be in the lead with Alano or Jimenez in the yellow. The King of the Mountains and the team race by the end of this day, if it all goes well. But the Kelme team have been the team of the day for us.
Well, this is the same descent again that has been used on the Tour de France in the past. A very tricky descent now. They'll drop down into the bottom of the valley, and then they will start the final climb up to the ski station at Arcalis. Jimenez sitting in 2nd position there, forcing Escartin to lead around the corners, and you can see Escartin is not a fantastic descender here. He's not using the best lines around these very steep hairpin corners, and he's losing certain amounts of time. There's Armstrong. We can see him now. He's come across to Abraham Alano, and you know, I have to say, Lance must be surprising even himself, because I spoke to him, Phil, just before the Tour of Spain, and he said, I'm only going to use the Tour of Spain for training for the World Championships. That's where I really want to show this year. But I tell you what, I think he's riding himself right up into a very high position in the overall standings.
Well, he's right there now. Here we are, about to start the climb of the Arcalis. Difficult corner here, coming off one mountain pass and crossing